Donald Trump promised no new wars. He said it over and over. He was so convinced that he was the peace president that he lobbied for the Nobel Peace Prize. Then, in 2026, he launched a full-scale war with Iran.
Remember, Hillary used to say, he's going to get us into war because of my personality, she said. He's got the personality type. No, I've got the personality type that kept us out of wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars.
Hey, I know some of you will say, well, Iran is a threat and we had to do something. Stay with me, because the guy who launched this war is the same guy who created the crisis he used to justify it. Let's go back. No new wars. It wasn't just some throwaway line. This was Trump's brand on the campaign trail in 2024. I'm going to stop the wars.
Before we get into the details of Iran, I want to talk about President Trump. A very big part of his campaign was no new wars and no sending our money overseas.
Under Trump, we will have no more wars. No more wars. No more wars.
The Ukraine thing, remember that? He said he'd end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours.
But the question here is, would you give Ukraine weapons and funding if you were...
If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
How would you settle that war in one day?
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the horrible war between Russia and Ukraine totally settled. I'll have it done in 24 hours. I say that, and I would do that. That's easy compared to some of the things that I'd get that done in 24 hours.
CNN counted 53 separate times he said it. Then when it didn't happen, you know what he told Time magazine? Just joking. It was said in jest. It was an exaggeration. Well, 53 times is not a joke. That's a campaign promise. People voted on that. And 14 months later, Ukraine is still raging. Before we get to Iran, I want to show you something from 2011, before Trump was ever a candidate for anything. He said this about President Obama.
Our president will start a war with Iran because he has absolutely no ability to negotiate. He's weak and he's ineffective. So the only way he figures that he's going to get reelected, and as sure as you're sitting there, is to start a war with Iran.
Just let that marinate for a little while, because we'll come back to that. A lot of people forgot about this, or maybe they weren't paying attention, but it changes everything. In 2015, the US and 5 other world powers cut a deal with Iran. Enrichment was capped at 3.67%. 2/3 of their centrifuges were dismantled. International inspectors with the most intrusive access to a nuclear program in history. And so if Iran cheated and they wanted to make a bomb, it would take them over a year to get enough material. That's a year for the world to catch them. Experts call that the breakout time, and the deal kept that window wide open. Perfect? No, it didn't address Iran's missiles or their regional activities, and some provisions had expiration dates, all fair criticisms. But on its core purpose, keeping Iran from the bomb and keeping eyes on them, it was working. Trump's own administration certified that twice in 2017. His own Joint Chiefs Chairman told Congress Iran was complying. The IAEA confirmed it over and over. And he tore it up anyway. May 2018, France's president warned him to his face that it could lead to war. His own officials told him to keep the deal. He ignored all of them. He ripped it up and he said he'd get a better deal. Did he get a better deal? Of course he didn't.
In just a short period of time, the world's leading state sponsor of terror will be on the cusp of acquiring the world's most dangerous weapons. Therefore, I am announcing today that the United States will withdraw from the Iran nuclear deal. In a few moments, I will sign a presidential memorandum to begin reinstating U.S. nuclear sanctions on the Iranian regime.
What happened next is exactly what every expert predicted. Iran started enriching way beyond the limits. Their stockpile exploded. They kicked the inspectors out, and by late 2024, that year-long window had collapsed to about a week. That's how fast Iran could produce enough material for a bomb if they wanted to. One longtime IAEA expert said it flat out. This happened because Trump pulled out of the deal, not despite it, but because he killed it. Now, I'm not a psychiatrist, but when someone tears up a deal their own people say is working, ignores every ally, overrides their own official, and never replaces the deal like they said they were going to do, you have to ask, was this really about Iran? Or was this about Obama? Because this was one of Obama's biggest foreign policy achievements. And Trump had already spent years tearing up everything else Obama did. And it's not just me saying this. A former French president said that the only thing Trump wanted was to tear up the deal. Researchers who studied the withdrawal called his intense antipathy towards his predecessor as a driving factor. So here we are, 8 years later. There's no better deal. There's no deal at all. But we're in a war. But hey, at least Obama didn't get the credit. Fast forward to June 2025. Iran has a dangerous stockpile of enriched uranium, a problem that did not exist when the deal was in place. Israel had already been bombing Iran for 9 days when Trump ordered the U.S. in, targeting 3 nuclear sites with bunker busters that only the U.S. had. Netanyahu spent a week pressuring Trump to join in, and finally he did. Trump called it Operation Midnight Hammer. And he went on TV and he said he completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear program.
But that was Operation Midnight Hammer, achieving total obliteration of the Iran nuclear potential capability, totally obliterated.
Except his own Defense Intelligence Agency said that the strikes set them back a few months and almost 1,000 pounds of enriched uranium unaccounted for. Nobody could verify where it was. And the diplomatic talks that were underway in Oman at the time, dead. Inspectors locked out. 8 months later, February 2026, he launches Operation Epic Fury. Full-scale assault, no congressional approval, the biggest American military operation since Iraq. His justification? Iran was rebuilding its nuclear program and developing missiles that could soon reach the American homeland. But the IAEA director said this 3 days in. We don't see a structured program to manufacture nuclear weapons. Is Iran days or weeks from a bomb? No. Trump's own DIA had said the year before that Iran didn't have missiles that could reach the U.S. Multiple intelligence officials said on the record that Trump exaggerated the threat. Let me boil this down. Trump created the crisis, then used it to justify a war he promised would never happen. The Arms Control Association nailed it. Trump's people in 2026 are trying to solve problems that were already solved by the deal he killed in 2018. And it's not just folks like me talking about this. Marjorie Taylor Greene went on Megyn Kelly's show and said, Make America Great Again was supposed to be America first, not Israel first.
I want to say, what is happening to the man that I supported, you supported, the man that denounced what happened in Iraq, the man that said no more foreign wars, no more regime change, promised it on the campaign. J.D. Vance promised it. Tulsi Gabbard promised it. All of them promised it. And we're a year in, and we're in another fucking war, and we've got American troops being killed. I think it's time for America to rip the Band-Aid off, and we need to have a serious conversation about what the fuck is happening to this country and who in the hell are these decisions being made for, and who is making these decisions.
Tucker Carlson said, this is Israel's war, not the United States' war. Matt Walsh said, we killed the whole Iranian regime, but this was not a regime change war. We obliterated their nuclear program, but we had to do this because of their nuclear program. 61% of Americans disapprove. Fox News' own poll, Fox News, shows 58% oppose it. That's lower support than almost any major military action in recent history. And these aren't just liberals. These include Republican voters, and a growing number of them are asking the same thing I am. What exactly are we doing and why? And remember, this is the guy who lobbied for the Nobel Peace Prize. Netanyahu posted an AI picture of Trump wearing a giant gold Nobel medal. When the committee gave it to someone else, the White House accused the committee of playing politics. Trump wanted the prize in part for a Gaza ceasefire that fell apart months later, and then he launched a war. And if you're saying to yourself, wait a minute, isn't this the same guy who decreed that the Department of Defense was now going to be called the Department of War? Well, you would be correct. And I hear these same folks go on and on about how the woke left is all about participation trophies. I consider myself woke, but when I coached Little League, I always told the parents and players at the first meeting, I don't believe in participation trophies. You don't get a prize for showing up. So Trump didn't get the Nobel Prize, but he has a buddy at FIFA, an organization literally famous for corruption. Right after the Nobel Prize was awarded to someone else, FIFA invented a brand new Peace Prize, which seems to be just for Trump. No nominees, no judges, no real criteria. It seems they just made it up. But maybe I'm wrong. Time will tell. But it has been reported by the Times of London that the White House pushed for the trophy to be as big as the World Cup itself. You can't make this up, but I digress. Because here's what all of this 4D chess is costing us right now. A fifth of the world's oil flows through the Strait of Hormuz, and it's a war zone. Gas prices are climbing. Every time you fill up, you're paying for this war. Meanwhile, I'm driving on sunshine, solar panels on my roof, an inexpensive EV for daily driving. My fuel cost is less than 2 cents a mile, locked in for 20 plus years. My electric bill doesn't care what's happening in the Persian Gulf or with all these data centers. And while China goes all in on EVs and clean energy, dominating globally, Trump gutted the key policies that would have helped American companies compete. EV sales dropped here last year while they grew 20% worldwide. One analyst said that they're popping champagne in Beijing over Trump's rollbacks. So he launched a war that's driving up oil prices, a war he promised would never happen, and killed the very thing that would have made us less dependent on Middle East oil. That's not making America great. That's handing the future to China so the oil companies can keep cashing their checks. So let's get back to where we started. 2011, Trump says that Obama will start a war with Iran because Obama has absolutely no ability to negotiate and Obama's weak and he's ineffective. He really said that. 2024, Trump campaigns on, I'm not going to start a war, I'm going to stop wars. He really and truly said it, on the record, dozens of times. 2026, Operation Epic Fury. American service members dead. The Strait of Hormuz shut down. Oil prices through the roof. A war with no clear end and no congressional approval, built on a crisis Trump created when he tore up a deal that was working because he couldn't stand that someone else's name was on it, especially a black man by the name of Barack Hussein Obama. And if you're someone who voted for no new wars, I'm not here to call you names or tear you down. I think most people who voted for that genuinely wanted peace, and that's a good thing to want. But at some point, we have to have some accountability. You have to look at what's actually happening and ask yourself, was there anything in this man's track record, anything at all, that suggested he'd handle the most delicate situations on earth with care and restraint? Because that's the question a lot of us were asking when we voted the other way all 3 times. But hey, if you can look at all of this, the promises, the deal he tore up, the war he started, the contradictions his own people are calling out, and still defend it, then I challenge you to own it. Because here's what you'd be defending. A guy who said no new wars 53 times and then launched the biggest military operation since Iraq. A guy who predicted in 2011 that Obama would start a war with Iran because he couldn't negotiate. And then Trump did that exact thing himself. A guy whose own administration certified twice that Iran was complying with the deal, and Trump tore it up anyway because he couldn't let Obama have the credit. A guy who created the nuclear crisis, bombed the sites, told you he obliterated the threat, and then 8 months later launched a full-scale war over the same threat he said he obliterated. A guy whose own defense intelligence agency, whose own inspectors, whose own envoy contradicted him on national television. A guy whose most loyal supporters, Green, Carlson, Walsh, are publicly calling this what it is, a betrayal of America first. And American service members are dead because of it. So if you can defend all of that, I want to see it. Record your own video, just like I'm doing here, under your real name, your real face, your real hometown. Post it where your kids, your grandkids, and your great-grandkids can find it 10, 20, 50 years from now. Send me the link and I'll take steps to make sure it's preserved and searchable long-term. Because for over a decade, I've heard a lot of folks say, well, sure, Trump shoots his mouth off and he says terrible things, and maybe he's even done terrible things. But his policies, oh my God, they're solid. He really knows what he's doing. Really? A guy who knows what he's doing tears up a working deal, creates a global crisis, lies about fixing it, and Americans die over the mess he's made? That's solid? You support that and call yourself a patriot? You're comfortable explaining that to your great-grandkids? Then prove it. On camera, for the record, please go into great detail and explain exactly how I'm wrong. Knock your bad self out. But not to me. Don't tell me that I'm just a woke libtard with Trump derangement syndrome. I've already heard it. Tell that to your great-grandkids who will see your message right next to mine. I double dog dare you to do it. You know, we can have a debate about heaven and hell, what the rules for admission or denial are, or whether those places even exist. But there's no debate about the reality of our legacy. That's real, it's permanent, and it's the one thing we all leave behind that nobody can change, not even you. Your grandkids and great-grandkids will Google you, and they'll have something you don't, the benefit of hindsight. After all the noise and misinformation of this MAGA era has fallen away and only the facts remain, what do you want them to find? I think I'll be on the right side of history. Do you? So I hope you'll think very carefully about your legacy and take me up on my challenge. And I hope you'll stick around, subscribe, and hit the bell for updates, because this is far from the only promise Trump broke or example of Trump's overall strategy of just being an ego-driven bull in a china shop. And I'm just getting started. We'll see if there are any takers on my challenge. That's all I have for now. Thanks for watching. See you next time.